next thing I'm going to start to do is give him some hair. You can do this as a separate piece of geometry, which we might do. Yeah, let's do that. Alright, so we'll create a new sphere to start making his hair, and that sphere is now inside of our other sphere. So if I go to my move tool, I can move it up out of our head. And I want to leave this sphere kind of small. I'm going to hit F to focus in on it. And I'm going to use my grab tool here to just grab this top vertex and just pull it up. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of creating a strand of hair, or at least a very thick strand of hair. And I'll start to sculpt this around into the shape of his hair. Or her hair. This could also be, you know, you can make these hair strands a lot longer, and you can make some girly hair. And we'll make sure to smooth that out to just round out a lot of those details. And so we've got our one piece of hair. So actually we'll use this as our base. So I'm going to go back to my move tool, hit W, and I want to duplicate this. So I'll do Control D to duplicate, and I can move this down and I'll rotate it and start to roughly place it where I want it, around where his bangs would be. So I'm going to put that right there, and then I'll go back to my sculpting tool. I'll use my grab tool again to start pulling this piece of hair around. And you might need to mess with your influence a little bit to get it to do what you want. Oh, but I see. It's not curving to the left. I can't drag it left or right because I have symmetry on. So let me turn off symmetry. So I'll press and hold W, click and hold, drag up to symmetry, and release on the checkbox to turn off symmetry. So now I can move any direction I want. So I'll start to place this. Alright, so I've got one piece of hair down. I'll kind of flatten this up into his head a little bit. And so now I'll duplicate this one. And I'll just slide that over to make his next piece. And you kind of just gotta hand place each one of these depending on the hairstyle you want to do. And I'll add a little bit of variation to it. Start to pull these out, and I want to kind of bring them all together into one place here. Okay, back to my move tool. You can do any of these tools up here, or any of the Q, W, E, or R keys, keyboard keys, will get you to any of your moving tools, which will let you now select the object so that you can Control D to duplicate it, W for your move tool, and we'll move that. And I'm even going to rotate this one a little bit. And there's two different kind of rotate modes. Right now I'm in object mode, which has the rotational axis following the object, but I could also switch it to world mode, and I can do that by clicking and holding the I can do that by holding down E and clicking and holding and changing from object to world, and you'll see my gizmo snaps now to a world upright rotation compared to my object rotation. So again, that's pressing and holding E, clicking and holding the left mouse button, and dragging out to object or world. And this works for the move tool as well. If you click and hold with the W key pressed or the R key pressed, that'll be your scale tool. So I'll keep going here. I'm going to smooth this one out a little bit. I'm going to move my pivot back to the center of his head here, so I'll press the D key to move my pivot. Move it over to where I want to rotate from. And go to my rotate tool with E. I'll go to world mode by holding E and clicking and holding and dragging. I can rotate that duplicated piece of hair out, and I'll even scale it in a bit to make that a little shorter. And I'll keep sculpting. And this should actually start getting longer now that it's getting down his face a bit. Okay. Duplicate, rotate, and I'm going to scale this down in the world axis so it extends down a little bit like that. In as well. And at some point you might want to kind of restart with your hair shape to get something more unique. And that's where you can duplicate this one. Kind of start to get a different shape. And I'm going to start inflating these larger pieces of hair back here to give them some more thickness. I'm using the bulge tool here to make these hair strands a little bit thicker. Let's do something fun. I'm going to have this strand of hair tucked behind his ear. Let's see if we can push that around. And at some point I would want to rotate this, so I'm actually just going to grab this vertex. So I'll go back to my move tool, I'm going to go into vertex mode. I'm going to grab this one vertex at the very end so I can pull it around, but I also want to pull around all the vertices around it. So if I hit B, that will turn on my soft select mode. And so it kind of makes a gradual of the same adjustment. So if I rotate this point, I'll kind of flip things around, and it gets a little bit messy, but we still have our smooth tool to make everything better. And if you click and drag, if you're holding the B key and you click and drag, that'll increase the radius of your soft selection. So let's grab that smooth tool. Nice. All right, I'll keep pulling that now. And you may even need to add more subdivisions to these if you want to get some extra detail. But pretty much you just need to cover the scalp. That's the most important part. So I'm going to make these chunks a little bit wider in some areas, just so we're not seeing his scalp so much. I'm going to flip this over to the other side using my scale tool and dragging it past 0 so it inverts itself. You'll see it turns black because it is inverted now. So if you'll remember, we talked about normals. You need to flip the normals to turn this model inside out because we've scaled it inside out. So we'll just go to Mesh Display, and under Normals we'll reverse. And that will turn it back to normal, and we can keep sculpting as normal. Alright, so I want to make this large last piece here, but as I grab and drag it down, it's not giving me the rotation that I want. So here's where I would use that vertex technique again. So I'll grab the vertex on the very end. I'll turn on my soft selection with B, and I can hold B and click and drag to increase the size of my soft selection. So now it does the same thing when I move it down, but now I can also rotate it. It gives me a much nicer deformation that way. I'll still need to do a little bit of smoothing, but if I just work on the top half first, then I'll bring down my soft selection and then start to work my way back a little bit. And I'll go back to my smooth tool to clean this up. And at some point, you might want to actually just bulge this out because we're getting too smooth and our points are too close together. So you can use any inflate, bulge. I just want to make this a little bigger, especially side to side. Alright, let's keep pulling this down. smooth it out. Getting there. Maybe two more. Just a couple. And I can make these ones. Actually, I think I'll make this one thicker. And then these two should do it. Make sure to duplicate it. I forgot to duplicate. Okay, so he's got a full head of hair. I'm gonna smooth out that last piece just a little bit more. It's looking a little strange around the rest of them. Okay,